golf is the only thing in golf that doesn't change. The only thing that changes is the person playing.
Is this man a one-time winner on the PGA Tour?
The point, Alan, is he didn't go Hollywood.
You need a fourth? Well, before we get started with this episode, I will say that our guest is a golf lover who's very adept with a musical instrument. And have you ever seen those videos of Echo ambassador Eric Van Ruin playing the guitar? Like, he can actually shred.
Yeah, he's a neat, stylish guy. We've had our eye on him for a while here.
Have such a beautiful golf swing and be able to play guitar like that. I'm deeply jealous. And somehow, no one can make joggers look cool, but Eric Van Ruin does, partly because he's got the right shoes. Echo Footwear, who's a sponsor of this podcast. We love Echo. We love music. Let's get to this Need a Fourth. Hello, and welcome back to another Need a Fourth podcast. This is Alan Shipnuck. My co-hosts, Geoff Ogilvy and Michael Bamberger. We take turns surprising each other with a mystery guest. Today, Michael has provided said person. Do you want to, Dr. Bamberger, do you want to give us a few hints about who they might be?
Sure. Today's guest is one of the wittiest and most intelligent people I know. He has, as Geoff has traveled the world playing golf and carrying a lug of clubs, this guy has traveled the world with the tools of his trade. But I don't know the answer, but he only travels probably with about 3 or 4 of his instruments. He has logged, he's not a likely candidate. Well, that would be an understatement. I was going to say he's not a likely candidate to ever get in the World Golf Hall of Fame. I would say that ship has sailed. But he is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Alan, you may already know.
Well, I have an advantage because I know your personal habits and your friendships. If his initials begin with a T, like as in T-bone? No, okay.
No, interestingly, no. Interesting. Good thought. Very good thought. And perhaps for another day. He shared. Now this will be tough for Geoff and easy for Alan. He shares the initials with an iconic New York Yankee, even though his own baseball tastes run to the Atlanta Braves, formerly the Milwaukee Braves, but his affection for them, I think, is very much rooted in the state of that he grew up in, which is Georgia. Is this getting too easy for you, Alan?
Would that baseball player be Mickey Mantle?
The baseball player would be Mickey Mantle.
All right. I think that makes our mystery guest perhaps Mike Mills. Would I be correct?
Yes, our mystery guest is Mr. Mike Mills. Often from here he is.
Hey,
Wow.
I love it.
Hey guys.
For those who don't know, and most do, Mike Mills is the bassist for R.E.M. and a great friend to many of us who hang around golf courses. And Mike and I have logged a lot of time at Augusta National and on various golf courses. And you can see Mike at the Athens Country Club. Plying his other trades. Sometimes in the woods. And anyway, Mike, it's a great pleasure to have you here. Alan, have you met Mike along the way?
No, surprisingly not. I know you guys have been friends forever, and Mike is an enthusiast. But or did we have a quick conversation at Augusta once?
It's entirely possible. That would have either been on the course or at T-Bones, which is my unofficial home.
Yeah,
there in Augusta.
Yeah, but we never spent any quality time, much to my chagrin. But your legend precedes you. Thank you for doing this. This is great.
My pleasure. Well, there's still time. We can hang at the next Masters.
And Mike, you wouldn't know this, but Geoff is in a hotel. Geoff Ogilvy, an assistant captain on the President's Cup team this year, is in a hotel room in Tribeca, where I know you've logged a lot of time. Mike is a student of the better hotels. Like, he will flat out say to me, "This is way above your pay grade. You're never sniffing such and such hotel." I'm okay with that. But so, Mike, you wouldn't know this, but Geoff often does this from home, and there are no nods to his long and distinguished profession in golf. But you do see an acoustic guitar standing in the corner of his office.
It's actually a Les Paul. It's actually a Gibson Les Paul, Michael.
Whoa. Excellent. Even better.
It looks better than it sounds when I play it.
There's mine up there.
Oh wow!
Nice. I'm curious, for Geoff and Mike, is there a rivalry between the bassist and the guitarist? Does one look down upon the other, or what is that dynamic like?
Well, only a friendly sort of rivalry. I mean, we make fun of their little bitty strings. It's like anybody can play those tiny little things. Takes a man to play big fat bass strings. But no, I mean, I love to play guitar too. And a band of all bass players would be pretty boring.
Geoff, who's the most famous musician you've ever jammed with?
I haven't. I've jammed with them all on YouTube on my at home, but I've never jammed. I'm a very private guitarist. I'd be we could have a game of. I'd be probably a 12 handicap guitarist probably. So Mike, what's your golf handicap? We can compare off skills.
Let's say you're probably a better guitar player than I am a golfer. I'm currently riding about a 16.7 index. I just don't play consistently enough to keep it down. I got down to 14 at one point when I was actually hitting it, but I just don't have the time to get out there. If I got out there 2 or 3 times a week, I could probably get it back to a 14, but it's hard to find the time.
Mike, what was your first love, baseball or golf, and how did you find your way to golf?
Well, baseball was my love ever since I was a kid listening to type. I put the little transistor radio under my pillow at night and listened to the Braves, especially when they're in the West Division. So I was listening to a lot of West Coast games, which kept me up really late, which probably explains why it was so easy to be a musician, because I'm just used to being up late anyway. Golf, my dad got me into golf when I was about 14. I played for a couple of years and really loved it. But then, once I went to school and got on the road, there was neither time nor money to play golf, unfortunately. And then later on in the musical career, we managed to have some money and find some time, and I was able to play some really cool places on tour.
Was there a period where being a musician who loved golf was not cool, and did that public opinion shift at all? And how did your bandmates take your obsession?
Well, my manager and Bill Berry, the drummer, and our manager Bertus Downs, they both played. So we always had, it wasn't a complete ostracization for wanting to play golf. Golf. Back in the 80s when I was playing it, golf had a lot of heavy baggage. It was at the time, it was a very elitist sport. It certainly no longer is, which is great, but it was at the time. And the clothes were just bad. I mean, they were bad. There's just no getting around it. The Sansa belt pants, it was all the rage, but anyway. I didn't care. I played it. I loved it. There's just something so satisfying about when it happens, making a ball go where you want it to go. And I loved it. And there are just so many aspects of the game that I really enjoy, but it's come so far since then. I mean, now, half the people I know that are musicians are also golfers. There's no stigma to it anymore. And people have found out how meditative it can be if you don't let your temper run away with you.
Well said. I should note that Mike is newly and happily married. Before I tell the following story, because I think it relates to Machrihanish, but Mike and I have a great mutual friend, Bertus Downs, through whom we met in about 1992 would be my guess. Alan once in a story, I think he was writing about Machrihanish, and he was writing about the rough, and Bert picked up on this line years ago. Has been running with it
forever. Can we get an edit? Jeez.
No.
Okay, Bert
go ahead, Mike.
actually told me.
I fucking knew it. I knew it. This is all
Bertus told me
setup.
No, it's not. We didn't speak before. Bertus told me this story today, and he said, "Make sure you mention it to Alan." And I said, "Well, I maybe it'll just come up on its own." So, go ahead, Michael. You can
did that. What was it? Machrihanish and Bertus's telling, or did that come up?
He didn't mention the course.
Alan, is it Machrihanish?
Yes.
Alan compared the rough at Machrihanish to, I think, the thick hair of a supermodel, a wild and woolly supermodel, the next day.
I mean,
to which Bertus responded, like he would know.
Yeah.
My preamble to all this is, and I'm not asking, Mike might.
I can neither confirm nor deny that, but I can certainly imagine it. Not that I have.
That's
But
part of being a writer. You have to
exactly.
take places they can't go otherwise. So I was doing a service there.
That's what songs are for, and what articles and books are for. Absolutely.
Geoff, of course, has been doing this with Alan and me for a number of months now. And one of the things that comes out when you hear Geoff talk about golf and professional golf and tournament golf and trying to beat the course and trying to beat the other guy is that it is an odd blend of science and art, which of course it is. And of course, being in a band like you are and mastering an instrument as you have, that too there's a lot of science to the playing of a musical instrument. And of course, there's a lot of art too. And I wonder if you've ever given any thought to comparing, is there some reason why so many musicians are drawn to golf and so many golfers are drawn to music? Do you think there's some connection there between that weird blend of art and science?
I would think so. I mean, certainly when you say it, it becomes clear what those parameters are. In order to become good at either one, you have to understand how to do it. You have to put the work in. You have to know how to play the bass or how to play the guitar. And to be a golfer, you have to know how to swing the club, how to hit the club, how to move your body. So all those scientific and technical aspects come into play. But once you've learned that, it's nothing without the imagination and the creativity to do something with it. Alan, I've been reading your book recently about Phil, and just, that's the paradigm example of someone who put the work in to learn how to do these things, and then had the imagination and creativity to apply that to whatever situation he put himself in. So that's, and the same for music. I mean, you can learn how to play guitar, but if you don't have that creative part of your brain, you'll never write a good song.
To follow up on that, what about the competitive side? Professional golfers come in all different levels of competitiveness. Tiger and Jack Nicklaus, of course, would be at one level, but then you have some, real soul type golfers like Geoff Ogilvy, for whom the competition is part of it, but not the defining thing. When you think about your own success in a really cutthroat, tough business, to what degree does competitiveness explain the success of the band?
I don't like to think of music as a competitive endeavor. People ask me to judge Battle of the Bands and things like that, and I don't want to do that, because I don't want to say, well, you're the winner and you're the loser. That's sort of antithetical to what music is. The guy who sings in the shower, to me, is a musician, just the same as somebody who's playing Madison Square Garden. But it's. I enjoy both aspects of it. I'm a very competitive person, but I try not to put that in music. That's why I play a lot of golf. I play a lot of fantasy sports. I'm really competitive, and I love beating other people in a non-harmful manner. And with music, everybody should win. It's like when we first got started, back in the early '80s, the music that became indie rock was a reaction to the stifled playlists of commercial radio, the really, corporate aspects of everything you heard on the radio, and all the bands that we ran into on these, circuits that we were creating and they were creating, and all the music we were making to play on this brand new format of college radio. We were all in that together. We were all, it's not a zero-sum game. That's the great thing about music. Everybody can win. And, with golf, it isn't quite the same, but that's the difference. There is no, you don't have to beat somebody to win at music.
The songwriting process is always fascinating me, because Michael and I, when we type our stories, we're just alone in our little silos. And there might be some collaboration in the back end with an editor, and you might tweak a passage here or there, but it's really your own individual creation. But songwriting, the alchemy between the words and the music, and you have all these different personalities together in the band, and someone has to write the words, but I know there's a lot of tweaking along the way, and the rhythm and the bridges and all that. Like it amazes me. And Michael Stipe always seemed like a guy who was a poet at heart and tremendously gifted, and possibly a little headstrong. Can you speak to just how complicated it is to build a song together as a collaboration?
We were really lucky in that aspect of the process, because Peter and Bill and I would write the music, sometimes alone, sometimes together. And then we would all four get together and we'd show everybody what we had, and we would work on those songs together. And then Michael would take a tape home and work on his stuff by himself. Or he would sometimes not be at the practice, which he really didn't need to be there. And the three of us would whip these songs into shape and then give him a tape, and he would sit there and write that by himself. So we were really fortunate that we had a really nice division of labor. Fortunately, Michael's such a great lyricist that we had, there was very, very few occasions where anyone said, I don't like that, please change it or please do this. I mean, I can count them on one hand the times that ever happened. So we were just really lucky that we were all good at what we did. And we all had if not an intuitive understanding, certainly a learned understanding of the process and how it works. Peter's a rock historian. I am to a lesser degree. So we knew all the pitfalls that were built into this, all the problems that could develop, and we tried to head those off at the pass. One of the things is Peter said early on, we're going to split the songwriting 4 ways. Everybody gets equal credit for every song we write. And I said, well, I don't want to do that. I said, if I write a great song, I want everybody to know it. It's not about the money. I just want the credit. So he said, yeah, I get that. He said, I understand that. But there are 3 things that'll break up a band, and money is at the top of the list. And so if you've got 1 or 2 guys writing all the songs and getting all the publishing money, and the other guy or 2 guys or girls, whatever, I'm using guys as my reference, then that causes problems, if not sooner than later. So we just nipped that one in the bud and split it all equally, which is one of the greatest decisions we ever made. It actually turned out to be true because we all did contribute to the process.
So let me make sure I understand this. You guys would write the entire sound to the song, and then Michael would have to channel that energy and that vibe into the words themselves. And there was not any back and forth.
Well, I think it's very different than the way most people do it. I think for a lot of, especially singer-songwriter soloists, but even within bands, a lot of times the words come first, and then you try to build the music around that. But for us, and I think one of the reasons that we were so consistently good, one of the reasons is that we had to like the song when it was just the music. You can have a really mediocre piece of music, but if you put great lyrics and melody to it, you've got a song. But what we did is we already had songs that were great in our minds anyway, before we ever gave them to Michael. So everything he did to them just added to the quality of the piece. And I think that was certainly one of our strengths.
Geoff, what was R.E.M. like in the 90s when you were coming up in Australia? Did Australians gravitate? I know the band played there eventually. I don't know how early on, but when do you recall becoming aware of the band?
Absolutely. We were R.E.M. were pretty big time, I think, Mike, weren't they? I don't know how much you sold in Australia, but I think it was a lot. I think our charts kind of followed the US. I mean, we're kind of Australia's sort of that mid between the following the English and following the American music. You know what I mean? But R.E.M. sort of transcended all of that. It was a pretty worldwide band from our perspective. It was really big. I'm actually the most part I'm interested in, Mike, is one, are you a gear junkie? Music like basses and golf, and also, I mean, both. I think dabbling guitar, like I have quite a lot, you end up, if you really, and being fortunate enough that I've had a little bit of money and met some cool people along the way. Once you start getting into guitars, you can take a pretty deep dive into the equipment, and I found that the older the guitar, the more fun it was to play. And there's a lot of parallels, I think, with golf clubs too. I think, how do you feel about guitars? Do you love them? And do you like the older ones better? Do you think technology's taken the soul out of it?
Wow, you've hit on a lot of really important topics in that one speech there. Yes, older. Sorry, to call it a speech, but older. Yes, I like older better. One reason I didn't really become a total gearhead and guitar nerd is because I just know what a rabbit hole it can be. I mean, once you start getting into, gear and guitars, you can just do deep dives for the rest of your life on it, and always be searching and always be looking and always be buying more guitars. And I knew that if I let myself do that, I'd just be trapped forever. And you got to have somewhere to put the dang things anyway. So I tried not to go too far down the rabbit hole. But yeah, I mean, you got to find what works for you. You got to find what you like. I try to have, like what I showed you up there on the wall. I've got a Gibson SG, a Gibson Les Paul, a really nice Fender Strat, the Kenny Wayne Shepherd model. I played with Kenny Wayne in some shows, and he's got a great. And then there's an Airline 3 humbucking pickup guitar that, Geoff, you might really enjoy if you've ever checked out an Airline guitar. So Yeah, gearhead, kind of, but I just can't retain that much knowledge, so I never went that deep. But I will say something funny about equipment. I've got a full set that I've managed to hold on to of Tommy Armour 842s. I think the Silver Scots from Michael. I probably used them with you sometimes, right? And so I couldn't find my other clubs were in the shop, or I couldn't find them, and they still have steel shafts. So I went out to play around with these 842s with steel shafts, and by the 15th hole, my wrists were just killing me. I could barely swing the club because the steel shafts were just killing me. So older is better in a sense, but you got to embrace the technology because it'll fend off some pain and certainly give you a little more distance.
Talking about the airline, so the airlines, correct me if I'm wrong, is the airline the guitar that Jack White made famous not made famous, but played really well in the White Stripes? The red thing?
It might be, because I'm looking at mine. It certainly looks like the one he used to play. Yeah, you might well be right about that. That sounds right, because it certainly sounds like an airline.
And there's that great, I don't know if you ever watched it. I don't know if guys like you watch this, but Guitar Junkies do that documentary they made, It Might Get Loud, with Jimmy Page and Jack White and The Edge, I think it was.
I have not seen that yet.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it's probably sort of, it's like a golf magazine for a professional golfer. We don't read golf magazines, and you probably don't watch guitar documentaries.
No, I want to see it. I definitely want to.
Jack White's got this great quote. He's got this great quote in there, and he says, it'd be easy to go out and buy a new Les Paul or a new Stratocaster, but that doesn't really make you a more creative person. He wanted to buy sort of a crappy guitar, so he had to dig the sound out of it. He didn't want the guitar to make his sound. He wanted sort of an average crappy guitar. And from what I understand, an airline is kind of a crappy guitar, and he wanted to have to go find it.
He's a wise man, an incredible musician, but he's also very wise. Yeah, it's like, I think the same thing with the golf. I'm really glad that I learned on, the technology today is just so astounding that if you start out with that technology, it just makes you think you're better than you are, and you may not put the work in to really get where you want to go with it. So yeah, I totally agree with that remark. I love the airline. No, it's not the best guitar ever made, but if you can figure it out, you can make it sound good, and that's where your creativity comes into play.
That's kind of like why pros use blades, right, Geoff? Like, you want the feedback, you want to know the mishits, you want to know where the sweet spot is. If I hold like a blade 3-iron and it makes me fearful, I need the technology, but better players, they want less margin for error. I guess it's the same in a guitar.
I think the less the club helps you, the more you have to go find it. Yeah, like if you want to fix your putting, you don't go get a big mallet, you go get a bullseye.
I found my dad passed away 20 years ago, but I found he had is it a Ben Hogan steel shafted 1-iron? And so I took it to the range, and it was like trying to hit it with an automobile. It was like nothing worked. I couldn't get it more than a foot off the ground. It hurt my hands. It hurt everything to hit the ball. I was like, holy cow, how did these guys play with these and devastate the course with these clubs? I couldn't even get the ball, 30 feet down the fairway. It was kind of amazing.
Have you ruled out the possibility that that's the club that Hogan played into the 72nd green at Marion in 1950, Mike?
I would love to think that. I would truly. Was it a 1-iron that he hit?
There's a debate whether it's a 1-iron, a 1.5, or a 2. Some people think it was a 2 bent to a 1.5, and some people think it was the other way. But Herb Wind and Hogan went to their graves, never really settling that very important debate.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, that might have been the club there. I'm sure my dad found it somewhere.
It's funny how mythology makes it a 1-iron. It sounds so much more impressive than a 2-iron, even though it'd be an incredibly hard shot with a 2-iron back then also. But 1-iron is just so much more macho. I don't know. Just demands.
The old joke: if you get caught out on the course in a lightning storm, you hold up a 1-iron because even God can't hit a 1-iron.
It's so good. I love that.
While we're at it, Mike, do you know the last thing that the drummer said to his bandmates before he was kicked out of the band?
See you at the Burger King?
No, that would be good, though. Here are some new songs I've been working on.
That's cold, Michael. That's cold.
Well, we're not drummers here. Mike, what was your attitude about playing golf on the road when the band was touring?
Well, I did it as often as possible, but the longer the tour goes on, the more at a premium sleep becomes. So your days off, I'm not an early riser anyway, so playing on day of show was pretty much out. And on days off, it just got to the point where all you wanted to do was sleep in and relax and stay in the hotel room or maybe walk around whatever town you were in. But getting up early, I wish I'd been such a fiend that I would get up at 7 o'clock and go play golf, but there's just no way. When you do a show the night before and you finish at 11 o'clock and you're completely jacked up and wired, and there's all these fun things to go do there, I was never disciplined enough to go home and go to bed and then get up and play golf. But I did a few times. I got to play some cool places in Australia. Played a bit in Perth because we had a, I guess we went down there early before the start of the 95 tour and played at, I don't know the course in Perth, but, they had these enormous bats that were like 2 feet long hanging in the trees next to the, okay. And then my favorite part was of course I sliced a drive off the side of the fairway into a bunch of tree stumps. And I walked over there, and as I got close, they started moving. And I was like, what the hell? I had hit my ball into the middle of a group of kangaroo. And I'm like, okay, excuse me, guys, excuse me. And they kind of hopped out of the way a little bit. And I walked up to my ball and they were all looking at me like, who's this weirdo? And they left me a little window and I hid out. And I said, thanks, everybody. And I walked back on the course and they just sat there and looked at me like I was from Mars. It was really cool.
Geoff, were you one to listen to music on your way to the golf course, or what was your attitude about mixing golf and music?
Oh, I think they mix. Yeah, I used to listen to it. And I'd get superstitious about the album that I'd be listening to or the music I'd listen to, because if I played well, I was listening to it all week. It's kind of different now because it's you're just shuffling Spotify or something. So like I'm not choosing. But back when you had to choose a CD and put it in the Buick like CD player that we used to drive for the course every day, I'd pick one for the week, Led Zeppelin 2 or something. And if I'd played well, and then I'd have to listen to it every single time before every tournament until I'd proven that it doesn't work anymore, and then I'd have to move on to something else. But it's kind of nice. I miss those days when you would have a CD in the car and it would just do laps. Radiohead OK Computer did laps in my car for a really long time for some reason. I just couldn't get off that thing, and I just you don't do that anymore. You pick and choose your song. You're almost not finishing songs anymore because you can just get to the next one and your phone is shuffling it for you and it's just picking whatever you want. I miss those days where I used to put in an album and just have it do laps in my car for a week. But yeah, I think it's fantastic. And I've been a bad habit. I don't think it's a great thing for practice. I mean, I know it's a modern thing for the kids to listen to headphones when you're part in practice. But as an indulgence, every now and then I like to do it because I just practice some great music. Just by yourself on the range with music in your head is just that's one of my favorite things to do.
You think it's not a good idea because then in competition that's taken away from you and whatever emotions the music instilled in you have been robbed in that competitive setting?
I think that there's probably some benefit to sort of keeps your mind active so you don't overthink your technique and stuff. I think that could be pretty handy. But I think golf's a game of awareness, and I think you're completely dulling one of your senses, and I think sound is really related to feel. And so I think you're not using all your capabilities when you kill one of your senses, I think. And look, it's a modern thing, and I might be wrong. I mean, I know the young kids probably think I'm crazy because they can't practice without headphones, right? And I see it. A lot of guys on tour like it because it keeps them in their little bubble and no one talks to them. And I mean, maybe they don't even have any sound in there. I mean, Patrick Reed used to love practicing with headphones, right? So no one would talk to him, I think. It's just, it's whatever floats your boat, I guess. But I always found that I didn't get as much out of the practice, but I did enjoy the practice. I could hit balls all day if I was listening to good music, and I would never get bored. But if I take them out, then I'd probably get bored a little quick and want to go do something else.
Did you ever think, Geoff, when you were picking the music about tempo and rhythm? Because to me, I mean, obviously, both music and golf are all about tempo and rhythm, and it's like picking the right workout music. If it's too fast or too slow, your body doesn't do what you really want it to do. And it seems like I might be worried that if you obviously not playing any death metal when you're trying to putt, but it seems like something you might have to think about. Like Kevin Streelman, I was playing with him at a pro-am right before I hit his ball. Worst day of my life on the golf course. But he keeps a metronome in his head, sometimes musical, in terms of his putting tempo, and that really helped me when he told me that.
Yeah, guys do that.
You hit
I mean,
Kevin Streelman's golf ball.
No, so we're playing. It's a pro-am. It's not real. He's just practicing. I go up to the spotter. I didn't throw him under the bus at the time, but I'm throwing him under the bus now. He pointed at the ball. He said, "You got 200 to clear the whatever," because I outdrove Kevin. I caught the hill and it was 20 yards ahead. So I just assumed that it had to be my ball because surely the pro was 30 yards ahead of me. And it looked like my mark on the ball. I didn't look close enough. So the spotter says, "Okay, this is yours. You got this." So I hit it. And then Kevin came up. We couldn't find his ball. And I'm like, "Oh, no, you did not just make the cardinal mistake of any pro-am ever." So hopefully he forgives me for it. But boy, I felt lower than a caterpillar's toenails at that moment. That was just bad.
As you surely know, Linksole is a clothing and a lifestyle brand. I've been wearing it for at least a decade. It's cool stuff. It's super comfy. Everyone at the Fire Pit loves it. We're believers. If you go to linksole.com and use the promo code FIREPIT25, you will get 25% off your purchase. You're welcome. And we're also giving away a $250 Linksole gift card per episode. So go to the Fire Pit YouTube channel and leave a comment from this episode and say how much you loved it, because surely you're loving it. You're a golf fan. You have to be loving this. And the winners will be notified and promoted on our Instagram and our Twitter feed. So get involved. We're trying to have some fun, but we also have to pay the bills here at the Fire Pit Collective. So back to Nita Fourth.
If you could have a walk-up song to the first tee, if that was allowed at a tournament, and you had to pick one song that distills your entire essence, what song would that be?
I don't know. We thought about that. Remember, they do that at New Orleans now, don't they? In the Zurich thing. You know what? I don't know. I'll get back to you by the end of this. What do you think? What would you walk up to?
Well, it would probably be some 90s gangster rap just to get me in the right frame of mind for competition. But that might scandalize the crowds at a tour event. So I don't know. I'll give it a little further thought as well.
Mike, I wonder if you could talk about Alchemy as it relates to a band getting together. And Geoff, you can chime in on this too, but they used to say of Ben Crenshaw, he couldn't play a course or even a hole that he didn't think it was a well-constructed course or hole. Geoff was obviously well on his game, playing great golf when he showed up at Wingfoot that year. But I would guess when he won the U.S. Open, but I would guess that if it were a different course and his vibe wasn't exactly the same for it would have been a different week altogether. I remember, Mike, at your 40th birthday party, a great Athens band was there. Mike, I'm just blanking on the name.
Love Tractor.
Thank you, Mike. Love Tractor. And I had never heard the band before. Just a spectacular acoustic, mostly acoustic, or maybe all acoustic sound. And I said to Mike, how come you guys, both with great musicianship, and you guys made it, and these guys didn't? And Mike, pardon me if I don't have this exactly correct, but probably have the mood of it correct. And I think your answer was, when we were coming together as a band, we were all good musicians and we got along well. But what we didn't know was that Michael Stipe had charisma. When we started playing, fraternity gigs and what other little, early shows you had, it was a revelation. So I wonder what role Alchemy has played in your life, Mike, as a musician, and Geoff, maybe for you as well. To what degree does Alchemy play a role of like you and the caddy, you and the playing partner, you and the golf course, everything just sort of coming together?
Well, as far as a band goes, chemistry is everything. Literally, almost literally everything. You can put four great musicians together, but if they don't have that indefinable thing, then there won't be any soul in what they put out. More than likely, the fact that in R.E.M. we fed off each other's strengths and weaknesses. We compensated for those things. there was just something that happens when the four of us got together, and it was it was magic, it was chemistry. You could use any number of abstract words for it, but that's got to exist for a band to really be successful. There just has to be some energy that occurs only when those people are together. And that's what happened with us. You could feel it sometimes. I mean, we went to a friend of ours got married, and we all went to the wedding, and it was the first time the four of us had been in one place in some years. And it was weird. I mean, we stood together and people just sort of backed away because there was this weird like force field around the four of us just standing in the same place. And I'd never noticed it quite like that before, but it was real. So for as far as bands go, yeah, you got to have it or you're just wasting your time.
It's just how engaged for me. The golf course. I mean, I think a golf course and caddy are a little different. They're probably the same, but if it engaged me, I mean, Winged Foot just engaged me. Like it was just an unbelievable challenge, and I just enjoyed. It captured me from the first hole. I mean, if the first green at Winged Foot doesn't capture your attention, then you're not really interested in golf, I don't think. And it just the more I get into it, like the old course, the Masters, Royal Melbourne, like those sort of courses, I just love playing because I just love the challenge. It doesn't matter if it's set up easy or hard that week. It asks you to hit more fun golf shots than most other golf courses do. If it asked me to hit really creative, ask me to hit golf shots that were above and beyond the normal sort of everyday PGA Tour week, it just captured my attention more. And I think I enjoyed that challenge more and played well. And I think caddies are similar. I played my best with Squirrel, who was my caddy for Alistair, we should call him, but everyone will know him as Squirrel, for about 10 or 12 years. And I just loved playing golf with him. I just loved playing golf with him on my bag. I just enjoyed it. So I think the chemistry in that respect comes from just really enjoying each other's company, and just it wasn't golf without him there. I mean, it was uncomfortable. It was just I just enjoyed the experience, and loved how he caddied, and he clearly, I guess, he enjoyed working for me, and so it worked. I mean, you see it with Tiger and Stevie there for a while, how much fun they were having those first few years. Doing it, and that Michael and Jordan have had their times, but how much fun they look like they're having those great partnerships. I think it might not be explainable, like Mark says, in the band. I mean, it's just all of a sudden you just get 2 people or 4 people or 5 people or whatever it is together, and the sum is greater than the greater than the adding up the parts, or however you say it. And it's just there's something special there. And I think most of it is just you just love doing what you do more when they're there,
So, Geoff, I want to ask you, I mean, surely one of the most satisfying things about golf in general, Winged Foot in particular, but, you never want to put yourself in trouble, but surely having to create a shot that is not your standard normal shot, having to create a shot and use that shot to get out of the trouble, that has to be one of the most satisfying things about playing a good competitive round of golf. Is that right?
I think so, yeah. I mean, because the driver's a driver, right? You sort of a driver's a driver, and 180 yards is a 7-iron. Doesn't matter where you are. I mean, obviously, the better the course and the tougher it is, you might have to do something special with it. But yeah, it's the shots off to the side. Yeah, the shades of grey. It's the little fly lie slightly into the wind with a short iron. It's like a lot trickier than it looks, and you've got to be careful because over the bag's bad. And I don't know, there's just all those little infinite bits in between that are the really interesting thing about golf, not the black or white, just the driver up the middle, hit it as far as you can. It's much more engaging and interesting, I think, when you've got you just got to level it up. I mean, there's a 7-iron into the first hole at just a normal basic golf course. It's like, oh, that's great. I hit it 180 yards. It lands on a soft green and stops. But then you get to the first hole at Winged Foot or something, and it's a 7-iron. There's about 9 levels on that green. And if you hit on any one of them except the one that you want to be on, you're going to make a 5 or a 6. That's a leveled up challenge. And I think if you're a competitive minded person, not even a competitive minded person, just passionate for the sport, and sort of, it's not about, there's no master in golf, and it's exactly the same as music. You don't master music. You just want to see how sort of much you can get into it, how good you can get at it. And and what you can do, and can you do anything new? Can you hit a better shot here than you did last time? So I don't know. I just find that it's all the shades of grey in golf, to use a cliche, that are the interesting ones. Yeah, and coming up with something, especially the funnest thing as a tournament golfer, I think, is having it be dead and knowing the announcers are saying this guy's not getting this up and down, and the guys in the crowd, they know you're not going to get up and down, but they're actually getting it up and down, coming up with something special. That's one of the most satisfying things when people don't think you could do something and doing it. That's the satisfying thing for me.
That's funny because, talking about, Michael Stipe has that ability to connect with the crowd, or whatever that star quality is that a lot of singers just don't have. Like, I'm wondering, Geoff, and you've talked about how a lot of golfers, they like to show off. They like that buzz from doing something for the crowd. But what's the other side of that? Are there really talented players who, because they're introverts and because maybe they're loners or whatever their personality or their background, they don't connect with the crowd. They don't feel that energy. And do you think that that's something that hurts some talented golfers in a way that it's hard to put your finger on? But when you talk about, oh, this guy has such a great swing, he should have won more. What was the missing piece? I mean, can it be the personality and they don't enjoy the crowd and the intensity? Like, as at a big tournament, that walk from the green to the next tee, people are screaming and shouting, and then you get on the tee box and they're on top of you. Like, do you think that throws people off?
I think there's definitely guys who are uncomfortable with that side of things, and there's some guys that really lift up. I mean, pick a name out, Ian Poulter clearly thrives. Guys like Ian, Phil, they thrive. The more people and the more they can entertain, the more they sort of go well. But then you get other ends of the spectrum, successful guys. I mean, a guy like Hogan, I don't think he really loved the crowd, did he? He just loved the sport, and he just wanted to hit great shots, and didn't understand why he couldn't just hit better and better and better and better shots. It wasn't about impressing people for Hogan. It was about impressing himself. I think there's multiple different ways to do it. I don't know that if you can work out why some guys make it and some guys don't, you can probably write a better book than your last one. You know what I mean? You'll sell a few more.
Ouch. I'm just going to log off now.
That's the question forever, isn't it? It's like what makes people successful and what doesn't. I mean, it's a recipe of so many different ingredients. It's just totally intangible, but that's the fun part, right? I don't know. Some guys really get the whole package, though. Tiger clearly was the best golfer, and he got better when there was more people and the bigger the occasion. Seve was the same. Arnold was clearly better when there was people around, and there's other guys who win small tournaments and never win big tournaments. And then there's guys like Brooks who only win big tournaments, Who knows how it all pieces together? We're all different. Something works for some guys, it doesn't work for others.
But it's such a relatively solitary endeavor. I mean, obviously, you have your coaches and your caddy and everything to get you to where you're going. Once you're out there, it's you. And all of those things come into play, whether you like the crowd noise or whether you like that particular course or whatever. It's just all those little things, how you handle it, how you channel it to use it to your advantage rather than letting it get in your kitchen and, distracting you. I think golf, as much as any other things, maybe tennis, is really all about channeling those things and using them to your advantage. And if you can't, you won't win.
I think so. Do you play better in front of people, or do you play better when you're by yourself?
Well, as far as the band goes, the crowd is so important. We would go to places and we'd be tired and hungover and not thrilled to be in this particular place, but the crowd was so glad to have us there that and pretty quickly how it's going, and you're like, holy cow, these guys are awesome, and then you want to give them the best show possible, and they can lift you up. The crowd can make you a better band. They can also make you crap. There are a couple of countries that the audiences are just so dead. Bill Berry and I used to moo at each other on the bad shows because the crowd were just like a bunch of cattle out there. Why are you even here? But those were, yes, absolutely. The crowd is an essential part of a live show. Oh yeah, you can rock out by yourself, and you can rock out at rehearsal and be just amazing. But it's really, those are just, means to an end, and the end is playing the show and having you and the crowd go on a journey together. And then and like Peter said once, when it's really all working, it's like walking on water. You can't do anything wrong. Everything you do is exactly the thing you should have done. And some of those nights, I mean, they are just magical. You walk off stage and you're like, holy cow, that's the best thing that could ever happen to anyone.
Can musicians choke? You talk about athletes choking. Have you ever gone on stage and for whatever reason, like you couldn't summon the magic?
Yes, absolutely. And you can't really see that coming. I mean, you get up there, and sometimes the worst job in rock and roll is a monitor engineer. It's like the drummer for Spinal Tap. You know how the drummer for Spinal Tap kept exploding and blowing up? Bands go through monitor engineers like you go through Kleenex at home, because every space is different. Every song is different. And the monitor engineer has to deal with making, where everybody can hear what they need to hear. And some musicians can be really persnickety about what they want to hear. And it's a hard job. And if they don't get it right, or if for example, like sometimes you'll have a show and can I say asshole? Some asshole bought the tickets on StubHub for his girlfriend, and he didn't want to be there. And he's sitting in the front row like this, just bored to tears. And I've literally leaned over the stage and go, why are you here? Why are you even here? And he's like, why are you talking to me? I said, because you're fucking up my show. You're sitting out there like a totem pole, and it's, I can't have fun with you right in front of me looking like a bump on a log. So anyway, yes, there are a lot of things that can take you out of your comfort zone. And sometimes you can rise above it, and sometimes you just don't. But the great thing about being in a band is, even if you have a bad night, if everybody else has a pretty good night, the crowd will never know. And so you can come through it okay.
Mike, I know you played with a lot of well-known golfers over the year. You mentioned Kevin Streelman. I know you played with Davis. I'm quite sure you played with Fred Couples and maybe Phil Mickelson. Who has helped you along the way? What have you picked up from these golfers over the years?
A sense of my own limitations is the first thing I got. I mean, it's like, what was it Bob Jones said about Nicklaus? He plays a game with which we are not familiar. I mean, the first time I played with Davis, I was like, okay, it doesn't matter what I do out here, because he's not playing the same game I am. They're just not even, they're barely related. So, what you learn is how to comport yourself. One thing pros, for the most part, I never played with Tommy Bolt, but I think for the most part, pros learned that, you've got to stay within yourself and stay focused and don't lose your mind over a bad shot. I think that sort of the consistency is something that's worth taking home. And I've tried to bring that to my golf game, try to enjoy every shot. And if it's bad, well, you get to hit another one most of the time.
Have you played with Fred?
I have not played with Fred, which is a bummer. He played here in Athens. One of my favorite stories is Athens Country Club used to have these really just cheap plastic white benches on every tee. And Burtis was playing with Fred. And about the third hole, Fred looks at that cheap white plastic bench and takes his driver and just taps it 2 or 3 times. Didn't say a word. Just tapped the bench 2 or 3 times and looked at Burtis, and they replaced him the next year.
Fred is very subtle.
He can be very subtle. It's true.
How about Phil? Have you played with Phil?
I haven't. I keep missing. It's like my good friend Mark Williams plays with Phil, and Burtis got to play with Fred. I've just not been in town a lot of times when these guys are around to play with. I've been lucky enough. I played with Justin Leonard and like Kevin, of course, and I played with Davis a few times, and and I play at Davis's tournament almost every year down at Sea Island, so I get to play with a lot of different pros there, and that's always, and there's something to learn from all of them. Some more than others, but I really enjoy watching their approach. We had a great time one year. The team had just flown back from the Ryder Cup in Ireland, the devastation at the K Club, and Cooch was our pro. And he was, they just spent all of their energy getting wiped out in Ireland, and he was kind of sick, and he got out and played with us and was great. I mean, he only helped us on one hole. He had an eagle on a par 5, and the rest of it was us, ham and egging it around, and we won the tournament. And that was super fun. Yeah, but the great thing was Cooch didn't know who I was. So about the 6th hole, somebody clued him in, and when I was out of earshot, he looked at the other guys in my group. He says, "Were you assholes just going to go the whole round without telling me who that guy was?" He was not happy, but anyway, we had a great time. Good guy.
Have you played with Bones?
Yeah, I played with Bones. He's just one of the best people in the world. But I have gotten to play with Bones. He caddied for me once, way back before he was more famous than I am. So that was really super cool. He's a great guy, and I hope we get to play again soon.
Yeah, for those who are listening home don't know, Bones has Athens, Georgia connections as well. What was it like to have him caddy for you? That's got to be a little intimidating because he's used to seeing some world-class golf.
Well, it's all like playing with the pros. You just they know, they've all been there. Nobody starts out great. Well, a few of them do, but most of them have hit the shanks. They've hit the mud ball. They do the whole thing, and the thing you learn is be ready when it's your turn. Don't throw your club. Don't curse unless you know the pro really well. And if you just go with those rules, it's really cool, really fun.
Had kind of an odd, interesting experience this summer. Mike and I were, or maybe I just sent Mike a text. I said, my wife, Christine, and I had gone to see Boz Scaggs, who's about 78 now. And like from the first chord of the show, I mean, it was spectacular. And he had done so much to get himself in such good shape for this tour. It was really like a magical experience. I mentioned it to Mike, and Mike said that Mike and his wife, Jasmine, do I have this right? Mike had just flown not that long ago also to see Boz Scaggs, which was interesting. But it's interesting how any of us can have connections to these people who are, I don't know what really roughly the equivalent would be, but like if you're my age and let's say like Bert Yancey. Now, Geoff would definitely know the name Bert Yancey. Mike, you may not even know that name. And Alan, you may be too young to know Bert Yancey. Just quick show of hand. Geoff, do you know the name Bert Yancey?
Mm-hmm.
Mike does. Geoff, do you? Alan, do you?
I know the name, but I couldn't tell you much about him.
Like he was a legend. He was, he went to West Point and he had a lot of mental struggles, but he had made a total. He was like Boz Scaggs. He was just like this figure who was revered, but not at the Hogan level or even close to that. I don't know what I'm saying here. I'm just going to give up because I'm not really going anywhere with this, except for that we have attachments to. I just what triggered it was just attachment that I think that Mike had to Boz Scaggs, and I think all 4 of us have. I can imagine. Mike and I are basically the same age. Like to see Henry Aaron at the Pfister Hotel in Milwaukee. I mean, it takes your breath. Now that's Henry Aaron. That's really an exception, but like just takes your breath away. And I would say this is true for all 4 of us to be at the stages of our life where we are. We have this appreciation for those who came before us and the artistry that they brought to a pursuit that, as we were saying earlier, is this mix of science and art. It's just neat. It's neat for Alan and me both to have to hear Geoff and Mike compare notes on these. Our thing is difficult too, but we get a lot of other takes at it. These guys don't. Mike, of course, can move on to the next song. Geoff really can't. He's got to play the foul balls. By the way, Mike, you may know this, but famously, that's a Trevino line. Even God can. If you're playing in a lightning storm, hold up a 1-iron. Why, Trevino? Because even God can't hit a 1-iron.
I wondered if
but
that
evidently,
was okay, that's great.
Evidently, Mike, your dad could, or maybe that's why you got the club because he couldn't. Who knows?
I figure if he couldn't hit it, it might have been broken, but no, it was. But it's a monster. I just don't know how anybody can do it, but people do.
Well, as we come to the end of this podcast, I will say I saw Bob Dylan at a little venue in Santa Cruz not too long ago, and he sounded great, and the band was super tight, and I had this sensation of sitting there like. This whole crowd was just completely enraptured. And these guys are making all these sounds with just their fingertips and a few vocal cords. And it's kind of magic how little it takes to make such a big sound. just like for Geoff, he can stand out there in the middle of the fairway and he can do something magical just with his, just with his own body and a very simple tool and a ball. Right. And the thing that you guys share is just like a really unique gift. And, the rest of us get to enjoy it in such a deep and meaningful way. So it is neat to bring you guys, the two of you in particular, together.
Well, what it is, and I guess one of the things that golf and music do have in common is they can be transcendent. I mean, to watch a player who's just so completely dialed in, and just he's going to nail every shot that he takes during that round. To watch that, it elevates you. It puts you in a better place. And the same thing with going to see a musician or a band who is on fire that night. It lifts you. It takes you out of your life and puts you somewhere else. And the fact that both golf and music can do that might have something to do with why there are so many people that like both of them.
That's really
that.
well said. Yeah, I do too. To have an opportunity to get lost in something that's way beyond yourself is a neat feeling. I remember when sorry to go down a rabbit hole, but like when Dwight Gooden was at the height of his powers, and my brother and I would go to Shea, or whomever, Christine and I would go to Shea, just to watch Gooden work. He'd work through the ninth inning. It was just like, as you say, a magical experience. Alan, this would be true for Alan as well, but I've covered, I think, 14 of Tiger's majors, and even the boring ones, like when he won by 15 at the U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. Just to watch the man in full, it's such a totally transcendent experience. Christine and I felt that listening to Boz Scaggs this summer, and or even like a little moment, like a guy, not in a violent way at all, but a guy threw a shoe in the direction of Michael Stipe once at a show, and Michael picked it up and he tossed it back, and he just said, "You're gonna need this, dude." And it was like, in another context, it would be nothing, but in that context, like, he had the presence and the confidence to just give the guy his shoe back because he's going to go home after the show is over. It was just neat.
Well, that's true. I mean, that is a certain calm confidence that really pays off. But don't forget this. Writing is in there too. I mean, if not above. I mean, writing takes the reason you guys are successful at what you do is because you take people out of their, whatever space they're in before they start reading your books, and you take them to a different place. That's why they read your books, not just to learn things, but to exist in a slightly different realm for as long as they're reading your book, and maybe even for some time after. And that's why you guys are known, because you're good at it, and you can make people feel that way.
Well, you're nice to say that, Mike. But Alan, there's one name I absolutely have to drop here. There's a little bit of a friendship and a connection with our great friend John Garrity and Mike Mills. They shared T-Bones and the piano together. And if I have the story right, there's been occasions where Garrity has maybe played piano in front of Mike. I'm not sure I have that correct, but I'm glad these are two of the most refined people you could ever meet in your life. Anyway,
I've been called a lot of things, Michael. I'm not sure refined is one of them, but thank you. But yeah, but Garrity and I have had a night or two that were really fun.
Well, Mike Mills is a T-Bones guy. I happen not to be. Alan goes when he's forced to. Geoff probably. I don't know. Geoff, are you probably not a T-Bones guy? I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm. No, not at all.
But Mike, what's the amusing thing about how you signed an Augusta flag from one of the years that Tiger won?
Well, okay. First of all, I got to say that what is funny is that we had T-Bone Burnett to dinner at T-Bone's during the Masters a couple of years ago. They had Tiger's victory flag, and he had signed it in the middle, and all these people had signed around the edges, and they gave it to me to sign, and I don't know what possessed me to do this, but I was like, oh, the hell with it. And I signed in the middle next to Tiger's name. And I kind of realized later that might not have been the most politic thing to do, but it's hanging there. It's still there in T-Bones with my name right next to Tiger's, because, he couldn't have won it without me, I guess, is the feeling.
I do want to say that was very generous of you to Mike to talk about our typing. But when people ask what I do for a living, I say, I give people something to read while they're on the throne. So that's you got to keep it all in perspective.
That's a valuable service.
Agreed, but
one quick shout out, even though he's got mentioned, but this group comes together because Mike and I share a mutual friend. And I know Mike would agree as I'm saying this. People say this occasionally. They said of my mom. I'm going to say this of Bertus Downs, who's the connector between Mike and me. You cannot find a finer person in the world than Bertus Downs, and you will never find anybody who ever has anything negative to say about him, because his starting point is to treat people with fairness and courtesy and respect. So he's just one of the great people in my life, and I want to thank Bert publicly here because, among a million other things, he made this night possible in a roundabout way.
I couldn't agree more, Michael. Thanks for saying so.
That's great. Well, Mike Mills, thank you so much for being here. We have a little tradition on this podcast. After you leave, we have a little Monday morning quarterbacking about your appearance and what we really think about you. So this is our last chance to thank you. And then you hit that little red phone icon and you're going to disappear and we're going to stay on. But this was a great pleasure. Thank you so much for your time and your insight. It was really kind of magical to hear you. I hadn't thought so much about the connection between golf and music, but the way you guys tease it out, that was really cool.
Well, you're so distracted by the supermodels.
The wild and woolly next day supermodels, you know. It's been a total pleasure, guys. I hope we all get to tee it up someday soon.
Sounds good.
That'd be fun.
That's great.
Thanks, Mike.
What a cool dude. I mean, even just his little studio there was so evocative, you know, like you could, if the walls could talk, right? It just looks like that place has seen a few things, and you know, it's kind of like golf is like music, right? I mean, all these guys we're talking about, Boz Scaggs and Mike Mills and Bob Dylan, they're in their 60s or 70s or 80s, they're still doing it. It's not unlike Bernard Langer. Like when you have a passion and you have a gift, like it doesn't really ever go away. So I mean, how cool is it that, I don't know how old exactly Mike is, but he's been at this for a very long time, but obviously he still loves it.
Yeah, Mike would be right about 65. Yeah, he is. He's got a great spirit. He's got a youthfulness about him. And he's got a joy about him in everything that he does. We all have moods, but his general mood is joyful, which is one of the reasons it's such a pleasure to be with. And he makes friends wherever he goes, all walks of life.
Fun chat. I enjoyed it. I can't believe you've never seen the parallels between music and golf, but I think they're the two closest. I think music is about as close. The only other thing that comes close to golf, if you ask me, timeless. Neither of them are masterable. You know, universal appeal all around the world.
Well, I've got no soul, Geoff. So
no. Sam Snead, Geoff said that to me. I met Snead whenever I met Snead. Snead, you may know this, Geoff. He could play any instrument by ear. You could give him a banjo. You could give him a bongo drum. You know,
two interesting instruments
guitar,
that you
piano.
chose.
Banjo. Well, it is West Virginia. Banjo seems somehow right. This has been another episode of New to Fourth. Thank you for tuning in. We will keep the guests coming. Surprises await. For Geoff Ogilvy and Michael Bamberger, I'm Alan Shipnuck. This was New to Fourth. Thanks for listening. That's all.
Oh my God, this is a dangerous group here.